So just as a bit of an overview of the Associates program, as you probably know then, that the objective of the program is that people put links to Amazon products on their website, some sort of linking back to Amazon and products. Anyone who clicks through those links and buys a product on Amazon, the website owner earns a referral fee for those clicks. So that's the business model for the Associates program. It has a long history. I think it's one of the first affiliate program on the web, and it's one of Jeff Bezos's, another one of his good ideas from talking to some people, talking to an author, a woman who'd written a book, and was having a conversation about how she could be actively promoting her own book to drive sales of her book on Amazon. So that was kind of the origin of the Associates program, was as a way to help people promote things that they want to promote. And boost the sales of items that they want to promote on Amazon. So it's had a long history there, and it's still very close to Jeff's heart, and it still is a very large component, a very sizable component of the way Amazon does business and drives traffic to the site at Amazon. So just to kind of come back to the point of the talk today, I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of what widgets are. What are we actually talking about when we're talking about widgets for the web? So how do they work? So who are the actors that are involved in actually participating in the widget process of getting widgets, publishing them, and using them on websites? And we'll talk to a bit about even just the kind of the architecture, the model of how the widgets are actually rendered on people's sites, just to kind of give a bit of an understanding of where they're coming from and why they work. And part of the point of talking about each of those players in the widgets game is to talk about the revenue models that exist for each of those participants in the widget game, so you can give a bit of an idea of where the money is in the project, because that's sort of the objective of why we're talking about it here today. I'll talk a bit to why we'll be using, why it's a good idea to use widgets, why widgets are an interesting thing to be putting on sites. And we'll go through a few examples of examples of affiliate widgets that are out there, and some widget usage in practice, and then what good practice is. As I said, please ask questions at any time. We can get through stuff, and I guess the objective of this talk is for you guys to get something. So if you have questions, if you have something that you want to get from it, then please do ask, and I'm sure we can tolerate some diversions and things. Come on. So what is a widget? So, you can get into a kind of dry definition of what a widget is, the etymology of widgets or whatever. But what we're really talking about are interactive components to drop on web pages, sort of small programmatic elements or small programs, small applications to drop on web pages that provide some kind of interesting feature, some interactive feature, some kind of dynamic feature, something that's engaging on a website. So it's sort of a trend from going from sort of static text content to static image content to more dynamic content being able to be pulled into people's web pages. I have had a fair bit to do with the widgets that Amazon developed from creating them at the start. But before I worked at Amazon, I worked doing a bit of research. I was kind of working for a research and development organization in Australia, and we were looking at distributed computing. And so one of the reasons I really like widgets is that they kind of really fulfill this dream of really supporting dynamic distributed programming or distributed applications. For the widget stuff for Amazon, for me, the beauty of it was to be able to take something from the Amazon web pages. The Amazon web pages are full of stuff. They're very long. They've got a heap of different features. There's reviews and ratings and images and pricing, various different pricing things, and a bunch of different features that live on the Amazon web pages, and they're quite unwieldy. So the value for widgets, to my mind, was to be able to let people take the content from that page that they're interested in and put it somewhere wherever it's meaningful and useful to them. So to be able to take an image from the massive detail page and to stick it on your web page somewhere with some markup that's meaningful to you on your web page, and perhaps produce a slideshow. So do something interesting with the content that Amazon has. So this idea of being able to tease things apart, take little components and drop them around the place to do interesting things is sort of some of the charm of widgets to me. The value that they drive is to take static content that lives in somebody else's managed page and be able to distribute it around. You're able to pick it up and use it in some way that's much more meaningful to you and applicable to you and relevant to what you want to do with your stuff. So yeah, so I kind of like that kind of mash up kind of idea of things. So part of talking about what widgets are is sort of, the reciprocal of that is to talk about what widgets are not. I'm not really talking about Gidget, and I'm not talking about Gadget. I'm not talking about a few different things when we're talking about widgets. So the first is to say that that there are Google gadgets and the Vista kind of toolbar gadgets and the Apple kind of desktop widgets, dashboard widgets. Now, these all things are familiar with, so things like clocks and ticker tape, stock tickers and weather icons and little dictionary searches and stuff that you can put on your own desktop. They're great, and they are kind of widgets, but for the context of this talk, we're not talking about those kinds of things. Those kind of things are really for you as the user of your computer. And what I'm really talking about widgets in this talk today is the widgets that are for viewers of your websites to use. So they're engagement things for people to use who aren't you if you're the person we're talking about. They're basically for other people to use and engage with. And the other feature that I'm also not talking about, so just to give some background, is that widget, the word widget is heavily overloaded in a number of different contexts. So there's the kind of Google Gadget version of that, but there's also from computing when you're talking about graphical user interface elements on pages, so things like checkboxes and scroll bars and a text field and things. All of the different features that are used to compose a user interface, they are classically called widgets in sort of computing terminology as well. So we're not talking about those kind of usability elements either. So I do want to talk just a bit about who's involved in the widget game and how widgets work. So we have people who create widgets, people who distribute widgets, people who publish widgets, and people who use widgets, kind of moving across. And somewhere kind of engaged with all sort of aspects of this is some engagement with advertising as well. So we're familiar that advertising is pretty much the prime revenue model for working on the web. It's the most effective revenue model. So of course advertising has a piece to play in pretty much every participant in this process. So starting from the far side, starting with the widget creators. I just want to talk about who actually builds widgets. So there's people out there, programmers develop widgets, designers design widgets, people build widgets. So why do they do this? So the idea is to produce some kind of, I've been talking about this kind of notion of dynamic, interesting content to put on your website. The idea is to be able to, so the motivation for people to build widgets is that they want to build something that's interesting for people to use. Typically, it could be a game, some kind of gaming feature to be, have people, engage and stay sticky and play some game. It could be something that's producing, giving people news feeds from something like a news site, an MSN kind of news site, and you have a widget that's just showing you headlines there. So, the motivation is to take some content and make it accessible to people in some way, or to have some, application that people can engage and work with. And the idea for them is to be able to monetize that in some way. Often people are wanting to monetize that in some way, either directly through some kind of mechanism to do with the widget, or indirectly through the benefit that having the widget on the page comes to. The other property that widgets have that's kind of interesting for widget creators is that typically widgets will have some kind of get this button, and we're probably quite familiar with the notion of widgets going viral, something going viral, people picking it up and using it in a lot of different places. And so the value is to get a large exposure across the breadth of a large number of websites. So for the widget creators, how are they making money? Well, a lot of the standard revenue models for the web are effective for the widget creators. So either sort of people clicking on the widget to go through and take some action, so a cost per click kind of revenue model, maybe for advertising on the widget, a cost per impression for the number of widgets that are being deployed out there for, basically if they've got some advertising content, you can sell advertising on an impression basis. Or the sort of widgets that Amazon has are cost per action widgets, where the widget creator is being paid, or people are being paid on the basis of actions that are taken on prompted from the widget. But the other thing to mention that while there are direct revenue models for these things across the widget spectrum, where there's a lot of indirect value for widgets that is quantifiable, but it's not directly precisely attached to the widget itself, but really to the value that the widget brings to your page. And so that's things like branding and engagement and those sort of values. So people build widgets, they write the code, they build the widget, and then they're presented with the problem of how do I get people to actually pick this widget up and use it? So widget creators need somebody, typically need people to help them distribute their widgets, and so there's a role for this kind of middleman role for widget distributors. So they broker between the creators and the publishers of widgets in some sense. They support the actual mechanisms by which the widgets are delivered and deployed, so the programmer is able to focus on building the widget, but not on the actual serving of the widgets through to a large number of people. The widget distributors then, in their middleman role, are also able to extract some value from the widgets that people are distributing, are creating, and that they are distributing by doing things like injecting advertising, selling advertising, being the broker for the advertising on the widget. So, so the examples, I'll just mention. So as by way of an example, some of the widget distributors that we're familiar with are things like ClearSpring offers widget distribution services, Widgetbox is another, and Gigya all offer kind of a distribution service for widgets where they help creators publish their widgets, and they manage the widget publication process for the individual widget creators. So I do want to just talk to you a little bit about that kind of process of what they're actually offering here. So kind of starting from the far side and working through, if you've got somebody who's looking at a page, a web page, a user is looking at a web page, they load their page, and the page has some widget on it. The question is, how does that widget get loaded onto that page with the content? How are they actually seeing the content of that widget displayed for them? So that's the kind of the role of the widget serving kind of role here. So typically the website on which the widget is displayed will have a small piece of code on it that for the widget that's a very lightweight little piece of code that will be a reference to the actual code for the widget. So when the page is loaded, the page will make a request back to, on the basis of this code, make a request back to the widget server and say, get me the widget that I need to render into this place on my web page. And so that rendering process is then or the delivery of the widget details, that process, is then the responsibility of the widget server. So the widget server typically will maintain, for every widget, it will maintain a template of the widget, which is the basic structure of the widget. And then for each individual person's widget, it will maintain a list of parameters that are specific to the instance of the widget or the widget that's being rendered. So for example, if the widget was showing a slideshow of photos, we have the base code for doing slideshow kind of work of taking one image and merging into the next and showing it. And then we have the information about the specific images to show on the slideshow on somebody's web page. Right? And so the widget server merges the template and the parameters and gives it back to the web page and renders it on the web page. So this is what the widget distributors are actually offering you, is this kind of ability to render the widget and take it and show it on people's pages. What they're also offering then is the support for what happens if your widget goes viral and lots of people are downloading it or using it and displaying it. So if you're a programmer and you're a widget creator and you build a widget, you're generally speaking not in a position to support your widget from being displayed at sort of 300 impressions per day to 2 days later having millions of impressions per day. So that's a massive change in the computing load that you're going to have to support. And so the widget serving people, the widget distributing people are going to manage that kind of scalability on behalf of widget creators, both scaling up and scaling down. Now the other sort of stuff that they then add as value in the widget the widgets process here is because they're doing all this distribution for you, they're responding to every page load impression for your widget, they're able to gather a bunch of metrics about the usage of the widget. They're able to keep track of things like who has been adopting the widget, where they've been picking the widget up from. People like ClearSpring are very sharp in their technology and justifiably proud in the technology they built to support knowing what the viral hubs from widgets are. So for example, if people are picking up widgets from one location, they can say that lots of people have gone and clicked the Get This Widget button from this particular web page, or the widgets on this site have been driving a lot of subsequent widget downloads and traffic. So people like that offer a lot of value to the widget creators because they're able to provide a lot of business intelligence about the way widgets are being used, how they're being tracked, and that sort of data. And they also have, that role then in knowing about the widget downloads and the widget usages to be able to kind of, inform advertising about, for the widgets. What sort of impressions are we getting? What's the best thing to be advertising in these slots on the widget potentially? That sort of stuff. So kind of moving across the value chain we had earlier from creators to distributors, we then want to talk a bit about publishers. So the idea of the publishers is they're the people who are putting the widgets actually on their web page. So these are the website owners. Probably most of you guys in the audience are in this class of publishers rather than creators or distributors. So this is most of us then. So I want to talk a bit about I guess it's coming to the crux of the talk for most of us here then, is why we're actually publishing widgets. So I'm sorry if this is it's not too bad to read. I was worried that it might be a bit messy to read. This is some research that came from Jupiter Research last year. Just kind of talking about the people's engagement with widgets, why they're putting widgets up. The brown, maroon, whatever you want to call it, bars are kind of business-to-business people that were interviewed, and the white bars are kind of business people who have some kind of business-to-customer relationship, so basically dealing with general users. The top box here is talking really to sort of the motivation of why people have decided to put widgets on their site, and the bottom stuff then is talking to what the value that they've derived from putting them on this site is. So I'll just leave that for you to have a little read through for a second, because I'll come and talk to a bit of a synthesis of the values from this in a second. But people are putting widgets on their sites largely not for one single reason. There's no clear winner for any of these communities as to why they're putting widgets on their site. It's not as if there's just one primary monetization purpose, for example, for putting widgets on the site. There's clearly a range of different reasons, and you're going to have to think yourselves about the motivation for why you'd be using widgets and what you expect to get from them. It's not like there's just you'll make lots of bucks from them kind of reason. So they're talking about engagement, branding, driving traffic to another site. So as a kind of as a hook to drive traffic to a more detailed site, for example, as the kind of and advertising reach as the motivations for putting widgets on sites, and then the value that you get is some kind of interaction with people. Widgets tend to be engaging, so you drive some interaction with people. You've got rich content. You're driving traffic to sites. That sort of reasons. So just to kind of tease into these a little bit more in detail. So the usages that people have for widgets then are cool. Have to be able to just, for example, certainly from our perspective at Amazon, my perspective at Amazon is to be able to display product information, but people have motivations for putting kind of interesting, fun content up, so games and that sort of stuff. Interactive content with up-to-date news or information is being put into content. Is one of the motivations for putting widgets up. Is about the actual content in the widget as being engaging in itself. Other motivations for putting widgets up include things like being able to further your own self-expression by use of the widget as an interesting piece of content. So this is, often the reason for people who are writing blogs, who are kind of making some kind of personal expression through a blog to put a widget up, is to basically augment or enhance the text that they're writing with some kind of content that's also an expression. Widgets also offer the potential to add some functionality because they are applications, so they can provide some active use. So they can be, a link to doing something, to buying something, to performing some action, to finding some information. So they actually bring functionality to your site. And then finally, they do offer the ability to actually be content for your site. So it could be that you are talking about images and you have a slideshow, or it could be that you're using the widget content as as up-to-date sort of stock market information, which is actual meaningful content to add to the content of your site. So you can think of the widget as driving value as being content in and of itself, and not as just a kind of a bit of fluff on the side. So then. What value do you actually get from these different motivations? So how do you actually think about that in terms of a financial benefit to you, or what is the benefit that you can return from each of these motivations? Well, if you're displaying product information in interesting ways, then you're increasing your engagement with the people viewing your page, and that's likely to increase a click-through and a conversion in a kind of cost per action kind of model. Is that something that seems to be quite appealing will, might motivate you to click through it to whatever's at the other end. And so if you're getting paid on a cost, a CPC kind of basis, then the widget is some way of enticing people to click. If you are looking at it as an extension of your personal expression or some expression, extension of expression, then the widget is a way of adding value by creating some loyalty to your user base by giving them some meaningful content to work with. And so that's going to increase the return rate by having meaningful content is going to increase the return rate. So you're going to kind of maintain a visitor base that you'll be able to monetize, perhaps not through the widget directly itself, but through your other monetization mechanisms on your site. So if you've got other advertising on your site, then this is a way of keeping traffic back to your site. If you are bringing functionality to your site, then the value of the widgets is to kind of also increase some kind of retention. So if you are doing something on the site, then people will be sticky on your site and will be staying there, spending more time on your site, being able to be more engaged with your site and doing more things, and you have much more of a potential to monetize, again, either through the widget itself, or we see a lot of the value in the widgets is the other monetization mechanisms that you have. And finally, if the widget itself is content, then you get some value out of the content, perhaps by having some action on that content, so the click-through rate. So you get a good click-through rate if the widget is kind of integrated with the content and the meaning of your website. And so all of these things then kind of tend to create longer user sessions, more stickiness, and that increases your opportunity or both stickiness and return visitation, and both of those things are good ways to improve your monetization of your site. So I think what that's been leading to say is that widgets are not an alternative to the other mechanisms that you have for putting content on your site. So widgets are not an alternative to things like banner advertising or text and text linking within your website. What they are is an augmentation to your site. So widgets, I think you need to think about widgets as playing well with your other kind of parts of your site. So really they are an augmentation to the other existing ways that you put content on your site, particularly with a view to monetize your site. So we typically see websites with some kind of slideshow of cameras along with a banner ad for cameras for some site to buy cameras, and then perhaps some reference to somebody with some cool photographs or something like that. But you're not using it as an alternative, but more as an augmentation. And the reason for that as well is that these different tactics for things convert well in different circumstances and different locations. There's no one kind of silver bullet here for the right thing. Got to think about the mixing and matching of the content that you've got on your site to look at it, optimizing it. So, having talked about them for a while, let's just start having a look at a couple of examples of widgets. The examples I'm going to show are mostly widgets in isolation. We'll come back to looking at some widgets in context on people's pages in a little while longer. Since we are at the Affiliate Summit and we're talking a lot about affiliate marketing and affiliate actions, let's have a look at some affiliate-related widgets that are out there. Firstly, I'd kind of like to reference or talk about the Ticketmaster has a bunch of widgets that are available. So these widgets are a way to promote on your site, promote upcoming concerts that Ticketmaster are selling tickets for. You can either, with these event engines, you can pick specific gigs that are coming up that you want to promote. Not my first choice, Celine Dion, but it is the one that they're listing on their first choice. So you can nominate specific events, or you can take a specific city or even a specific venue and have the widget dynamically keep up to date with what are the upcoming events that are coming up in those locations. So if you've got content that is local content on your site that talks to local issues or local activity in a local geographic area, then these things are great for talking about local events that are coming up. So Ticketmaster, they run an affiliate program through Buyout. I think they use Buyout as their affiliate program, and they're offering around about 0.5% referral on all the ticket sales that are driven through these sites. So it's not a massive amount, but ticket sales tend to have a fairly high ASP, average sale price, and so there's a lot of good potential for monetizing with these kind of widgets. So kind of cute, just small, neat, clean little features to drop in there that are going to stay up to date.
So is this not through Amazon, that's through Buy?
That's right. Yeah. So yeah. So these are Ticketmaster's widgets that are being distributed by Buyout. Yeah. Yeah. Just some more examples of some other people's widgets. So 2 widgets that are from other vendors, Library Thing and Shelfari. Both are aimed at interesting ways to present cover art from books, so information about books that might be of relevance. So these are clearly well targeted at bloggers who are writing, who are referencing printed material, books to be able to reference in their blogs. So they both represent ways of showing a library of interesting books. Both of them have ways to view more content about, more information about each of the books that are represented here. You get to choose the books or pull them from various sources for how you're representing them. For example, bestsellers or specific specific titles that you nominate. They both support dropping in affiliate tags, and specifically for these 2, they both support dropping in an Amazon Associate ID. So you can drop your Amazon tag in and monetize through the Amazon Associates program for these. But these are not our widgets. These are third-party widgets that somebody's created, and they're making money out of them as well. So you can monetize them, and the widget creators, the people who've built these widgets, are also monetizing them by I guess, taking the traffic for people who are not dropping associate IDs in themselves. So their monetization model is largely through the large number of people who are picking them up and are choosing not to monetizing them, using them as purely as content, and so these guys are monetizing them themselves. And just by way of further example for other widgets, so Adaptive Blue is a site with that are widget creators. They have a bunch of interesting widgets out there for a few different application areas. They have Last.fm widgets, Netflix widgets, so you can show information from your Netflix queue. You can show things from your Last.fm stations that the music that you're choosing from Last.fm. This one, they do actually have a bunch of Amazon-related widgets as well themselves. So this one is pulling from my wish list, just some of the items on my wish list. They have, in the widget configuration here, the ability for you to drop in an affiliate ID from a range of different affiliate programs. So you can monetize these through a number of different mechanisms. You can drop in multiple IDs, that sort of stuff from these things.
You said that was your personal wish list?
Yes.
With the uranium?
Well, you've got to put something up there. Yeah.
Sorry, that widget is made by GetBlue?
By Adaptive Blue. Yeah. So Adaptive Blue. So Adaptive Blue is the company that have built the widgets, and their website is called GetGlue. Yeah. So they have a bunch of widgets under that name. And clearly they're looking at the stickiness angle of the widgets there as well by the naming. They're thinking about things that are kind of promoting stickiness on people's websites. And to speak to directly to my experience, here's some examples of some of the Amazon widgets that we have available. From the bottom working up, the bottom one in the corner here is a search widget. So this is a widget that lets you do some searching across the Amazon catalog within the context of the widget on the sidebar of your page or wherever you're putting it on your page. You can, we'll come back to talk about it in a bit, but the idea is to support searching for products on the side on the page. And it's.
I have a question. If you've got one of those Amazon affiliate things, does it put if you're an Amazon affiliate yourself, does it automatically give you the credit if they use that search?
Yes, it does, definitely. That's exactly the point of them. So the idea of the widget is that when you compose the widget, you go to the Associate Central website, the widgets section, you while you can take the widget away without doing it if you've signed in, or you drop it automatically drops your associate ID into the widget, and then anybody who clicks on one of these products and goes through to Amazon, any purchase they make within the attribution window that we have at Amazon. So any purchase that they make doesn't have to be that item; it can be anything. Within 24 hours of coming through your clicking through your widget to Amazon, you'll get a referral fee for any purchases they make. The purchase that they make in that 24 hours. Yeah.
There's also a copy me. So from that also, if anybody copies, it's a widget?
No, so you don't get. It's not. You don't get the value from copying the widget. So the widget that's copied will not have your associate ID associated with it. So it's not viral for you in that sense. Yeah. Any more questions on these? We'll show some more examples, but feel free to ask. So the next one is we have an MP3 clips widget, so that's able to play, stream music clips from the MP3 store to your site. This one was choosing from best sellers in a category of music, one of the subcategories of music, trip hop or something on the Amazon site. So you can pick from a large range of subcategories of music and have it play you the best sellers. You can get it to pick things like the things that you've recently purchased on Amazon, for example, from the MP3 store, or specific tracks that you might want to promote. The next one, so that's again a sort of an expression-oriented widget to enhance your site with some content. This one here is a deals widget that we have for showing deals on the website. So there's a few features. It shows what the deal of the day is, which is dynamically updated every day with the latest deal. This tab here, if you hover over this, it'll kind of scroll up and show you another chunk of information. And this is about lightning deals, which are the timed deals that Amazon has. So it'll have a kind of a countdown for how long this deal will be available before it moves on to the next deal that's available. So there's up-to-date kind of time-based information about hot deals going on. And then there's another section with other good deals on Amazon, and you can actually configure that to pull deals from specific areas of Amazon. So if you're just interested in cameras, you can see what the camera-related deals are on Amazon. And then the final one here is just a kind of a personal expression-oriented widget. It's called, we call it the My Favorites widget. And this lets you pick products from the Amazon catalog, any product from the Amazon catalog, and put it up here. You're able to kind of title it. If you hover over the products, you can actually add some commentary to the products, say, why you like these products and things. So they're just a few of the widgets, but they kind of demonstrate a range of the properties of sort of engagement, of kind of interesting content, of dynamic, updating pieces, and of personal expression that you can use these for. Just to dig into the search widget a little bit more, to those things, you're able to, sort of working from the top down, you're able to preset the search terms for the widget, so you're able to set it up so that it will search for a specific term, so that might be topical to your website, that when the website loads, it will come loaded up with the results of the search that you've preset for that within a specific category. At the moment, it's just searching across the whole Amazon catalog, but you can filter it down to a precise area.
If a person is engaging, if this widget appears next to the content of a blog post, could it change the content to reflect, of the results reflect the content of the blog post?
Yeah, really good question. So did everyone hear that? So can the widget dynamically change to reflect the content of the blog post? So we do have a feature called Widget Source that I'll explain a little bit later on as well, I'll come back to. But the idea with Widget Source is that earlier I talked about the widget server, where we have widget templates and widget parameters that are merged together to produce the widget on the website. The idea with Widget Source is that you can put those parameters into your web page, and when the widget is rendered, it will automatically show what those parameters are from your web page. So with a bit of trickery, so it's not necessarily trivial, but with a bit of trickery, you can update the content in the widget source with some keywords from your site. So it will change and update to the site.
You won't do it to that blog post.
Well, if you update the widget source for that, or if you have some program that lets you choose the keywords to throw in there, then it will update to that. But it's not necessarily updating directly to the content that you have there. We do have some other offerings, some links that we have that were really oriented towards contextual advertising based on the content of your page. So that's things like the omakase links that we have on the Associate Central. The idea with those is that they will crawl the content of your website, pick out keywords based on the content of your website, and populate the products that are shown based on those keywords from your website, based on search. Yeah, so we have a contextual offering. This is not specifically contextual. There is a way to hack it to be contextual, but it's not specifically contextual on your website content itself. Yeah. And just other bits and pieces here, because real estate is small on widgets, so one of the tricks is to try and show some more information. So we have a kind of hover over pop-up here. If you hover over, for example, the image or any part of the text on the widget, you'll get a pop over, excuse me, that's showing a bit more information, pricing information, giving you some purchase options, some more details for that. And things like the ability to include some ratings so people can view and decide whether it's interesting. And there's a reasonable amount of customization options to let you color the widget and shape it and color it to fit the style of your website, to either blend in or to contrast what's on your website.
I have a question.
Yep, sure.
If someone gets the widget and they put it on their site, and someone clicks on the link, is your code?
Yes, so no. So no, it doesn't. Yes, yeah, no. So it doesn't propagate that across because we thought about that, but it's a little spooky. Yeah. So sadly, at the moment, we don't support sub-affiliates directly through the program. It's a great idea, and it's something that we're definitely thinking about how to work and things. But the tension with that kind of design is to always think about, well, is that really what people will expect from getting the widget? While I can see that it's a good value if you've got the widget and people are getting your widget, is the person who's getting it understanding, is that well understood that what they're getting into, that somebody else is actually monetizing off their widget? Is that clear? So there's, that's an interesting tension to make sure that it's clear and people aren't feeling gypped, when you do that.
Be a smaller percentage for the sub-affiliate, and
Certainly.
that person would still get their own credit.
Yeah, certainly. But I think that's a really good motivation and a really good use case for us to be working with. Yeah.
How many levels deep it goes.
Yep. Yep. Totally.
Because you can customize the color theme, is it possible to, say, customize one and you always go back to that same custom set? Is that in there?
Yes. So there is ability to, from our widget gallery, you create a widget and you can save the widget into a kind of your widgets area, and then you're able to clone that widget and copy it.
All right, so just clone the widget.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can clone it to put it into different places. But the other point about the widgets is because if we think back to that architecture diagram of the widget server, there's a callback on the website that calls back to get the widget and download it on your site onto the page where it's being requested from. You can put the same piece of code on multiple pages and you'll get the same widget exactly appearing on every page that you put that piece of code on, because the widget will say, get me this widget with these parameters, put it onto my page. So if you take the code and you put it somewhere else, it'll also download it onto that page over there. So you don't need to build a unique new widget every time you want to put it somewhere else on the page. You can just take the code and put it on different pages. Or if you want to make different versions, similar but different versions of the widget, from within our widget configuration, you can copy the widget to a new version, edit the new version, and put the code for the new version on some other part of your site, and you'll get the new version appearing there. Yeah. So there's a couple of models of copying there. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier about the ability to auto-update the widget's content based on the content of the page it was on.
Mm-hmm.
Is that pretty standard? Can I put the widget into CSS and then on every one of my pages it'll be the same widget with different content based on what's on that page?
You'd need to do a little bit of trickery, and we'll come to the widget source to show you the example of where the trickery would happen to do that. But yeah, we'll come to talk about that. Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what works for putting widgets up, just generally about why we're putting them and what are the effective uses of widgets that we've seen from our experience in having them up and seeing how people are using them. So what seems to work? So there's a widget selection that's clearly important. You've got to pick the right widget for the job. You should make sure that the positioning of your widget is in the most effective spot for the outcome that you want to have for that widget. you want to use the widgets in some ways to engage. If you're adding content or adding value to the users, then as a self-expression tool, you want to be clear on how you're expressing and what you're using it for in the way of self-expression. And then, also you want to keep the widget interesting and up-to-date and topical. There's no point, there's very little value, I would suspect these days, to having a widget that talks about the US presidential election. That's kind of dead old news. You're wanting to keep the content kind of up to date with what the issues are or what the point of your blog or site is about. So just to kind of tease into each of those. So what's the right widget for the job? Well, there's no kind of one-size-fits-all solution for picking the right widget. It's very much, as we saw from the survey earlier on about why people are putting widgets on their sites, there's a lot of motivations and there's a lot of reasons for putting them up. And so therefore there's a lot of factors in deciding to choose the right one. So if you've got a product-oriented thing, are you, for a niche site, are you showing the right kind of products? If you pick, are you going to put a search, some sort of search widget, or are you selecting specific products to show? If it's a personal blog, how are you augmenting the content of your blog? Are you making recommended selections based on your opinions that you're suggesting in the blog? So are you picking a kind of my favorite kind of thing, or are you showing your wish list, for example, if you've created lists, that sort of stuff? Or if you've got some, media-related site, you're talking about reviews of things. Are you going to sort of show video previews or stream some MP3 clips for people to be able to get access to the kinds of things you're talking about in your blog? Oops, am I heading the right way? Yes. Did I skip a slide? Sorry. The next issue then is, where do you put the widget on your page? What's the best place to be putting the widgets? And again, it depends on what you're doing with the widget. If you've got a sort of very topical, important piece of content that you're displaying through the widget, you can perhaps choose a large widget and dump it in the middle of your page as this kind of front and center piece of content, if it's clearly a kind of, a highly important piece of material. Otherwise, you can choose some kind of banner format at the top or at the bottom, or choose some kind of sidebar formats for content that's designed not as the primary motive for the page, but to augment the rest of the content on your page. So if you are writing a blog and you're writing articles, then you will want perhaps the content in the sidebar to augment your editorial comment there in the page. And then, picking the right size that's going to fit the real estate you have available is also another factor for choosing the widgets. About what slots can you drop the widget into. And to that note, some widgets support kind of arbitrary sizing, and other widgets just have a bunch of preset sizes. For example, most widget offerings out there will offer them in some of the standard IAB sizes for dropping them in. But if you've got a bit more flexibility with your site, then there's a bunch of widgets as well that are offering some kind of customization of the size and dimensions of your widgets and the number of elements that it's displaying and that sort of feed properties. So some of ours have sliders for width and columns and the number of rows. For example, if we're showing products, the number of rows of products that you're showing on the widget. So there's those kind of decisions to be made about slotting them into your space. So thinking about just dropping them in as well as using them as self-expression tools, well, there's things like if you're choosing some products, then you can think about adding, augmenting the display with some of your own editorial content. So say that you read this book last night, or this is one of your favorite pieces, or you downloaded it recently, that sort of stuff. So that adds value to these things. So rather than it just being a straight piece of merchandising, it's really you're adding your editorial comment to it, so people are engaged with your content and they can see why you put this there, and therefore it's much more compelling to people. Also, kind of using it as kind of self-expression, even the simplest kind of things of doing things like putting titles on the top of your widgets that explain why they're there, what are they doing, why is this content on the page, why have you chosen to put this there. That sort of personalization and the integration with the kind of point of your site is much more engaging, and you get much more better results as a better that. We do see better click-through in our metrics for the widgets that have been customized in these ways. So these things do actually work from our experience, from our observation of the metrics across the widgets that we're serving.
Curiosity,
sorry.
If you customize them, how hard is that to do? I mean, is that like something you do with clear spraying when you've that like some highly, you have to work with somebody, or what's the levels of barriers to customizing a widget that you suggest?
Typically very low. I mean, where customization is available, that's done in the widget configuration when you are setting the widget up and creating it. So typically, some of the ClearSpring ones have the beautiful feature of the widget flipping over or sliding to expose a kind of configuration options for the widgets. And in those configuration options, you're able to, pick and choose a few of the parameters to set up your widget, and sometimes that will include the ability to add some customized text. So certainly for our widgets, we have a kind of rich, almost some would say too rich kind of configuration set of options for setting up the widgets, and that includes the ability for you to enter text for every one of the products. For example, if you're selecting individual products, you can enter a little, essay about why you like this particular product as well. So that configuration and customization happens at the time that you are creating the widget to put onto your site. Now, typically you can also come back as the widget owner to edit those pieces after time. So I think a bunch of the ClearSpring ones recognize you as the owner and let you come back to edit them over time as well, that sort of stuff. In terms of updating the content, well, if you're handpicking stuff, keep it up to date, keep it dynamic, keep it moving. We find, clearly that the content that's topical, that's up to date, is the compelling stuff. Then that's why people are coming and using these things and looking at your site. We do have ways of dynamically populating the content for widgets. So a number of the widgets will let you choose things like what are the best sellers at the moment, and that is always up to date with how things are moving and changing. But one thing that we do find very much so is that while, for example, I speak to my experience, I'm sorry, but if we find that our recommendations engine in Amazon is fairly effective at recommending interesting products, people who bought this also bought that, we thought you might like this, that sort of stuff. It's good, but nothing beats, really nothing beats the hand-chosen editorial content that you put in there yourself. So hand-picking products, it gets a higher click-through and conversion rate. So if you're writing about a specific book and you choose, or you're writing about a specific topic and you choose to say, this is a book I like, this is a book I do not like, these sorts of things, and here's the reasons why, and you reference those directly, then those are the things that get the best conversion rate. So they monetize the most effectively is by adding your own content. Now, understanding that that's not scalable, it's not always feasible for you to be updating the content. There is these kind of automated ways of populating the content that will keep the widget fresh for you and will keep it up to date. But so that's a trade-off you have to make. How much effort are you going to put into maintaining content on your site versus leaving it statically? I think that's it. I just want to get through stuff before we run out of time. Come on. Okay, so one of the things that we talked to earlier, and we're kind of coming back to again, was this idea of widget source, which is something that we have, which is a way of letting you expose the parameters on your website that the widget will take to when it populates itself. So when it takes the widget template, merges it with the parameters to show the widget on your page. Widget source is a way of basically exposing those parameters on your page, which means that you can programmatically change those parameters on the fly. So it's kind of a power user kind of feature, but for people with large sites who are able to employ a programmer or have some programming skills, it means that you can dynamically at page load time update the content that the widget will be using, right? So it's a way of being able to give you some more at load time control over the content of the widget. So it is targeted to kind of power users, but it is quite an interesting feature, and it supports some interesting options. We'll give you a bit of an example later on. So as with all of these things, one of the the key properties of this is that you've just got to keep trying them. You've got to experiment with them, and you've got to measure how they perform. So all of these widget providers will give you metrics about the usages of your widget and the effectiveness of the widget, and you yourself will know from your site about what's working, what's not, what's changing in the monetization if you're changing stuff. So do a bit of your own A/B testing, try it here, try it there, see how different it is, what the performance is, mess around, because one of the things is that we've been saying is that there is no one solution for these things. There is no silver bullet that's the right way to go about this stuff. It is very much contextual on the basis of what you are doing and why you are doing it. So just to give a few examples then, just to see how they're used. This example is from somebody's blog. This guy's a graphic artist producing this kind of work. He's actually a designer, a graphic artist for Bungie. So he does the backgrounds in Halo, in Halo. But he also has his own personal kind of art blog. He's got, down the side here, he's got a bit of a slideshow of movies he likes. He's also got this slideshow of photography of some of the cameras he likes. He's also showing, a Facebook widget just to show, what his status updates are on Facebook. He's got a bunch of images in Flickr, and so he's got this kind of very cute little widget. I really like this one. It's a really natty display, which just takes the images from your Flickr feed and kind of basically dynamically fades them in. This is sort of one image is blown up, and then it will shrink, and another one will kind of move around. I like him. It's very cute. And he's also, using some other monetization methods down the side here. It might as well be Google AdSense or whatever down the side here as well to monetize the site. So he's got his content in the center, which he's also monetizing. He's got the ability for people to click on a buy button and buy his content in the middle of the page. But, he's basically blending some kind of editorial stuff about the films he likes or the cameras he likes down the sides, but in a kind of interesting way that's quite stylishly done. So that's a kind of, a fairly typical use of widgets in some of his content. Oh, sorry, that's where he's dropping the widgets in. As by way of another example, this is a site, now I'm not sure if they're actually doing this at the moment, but they've got the widget down here in the corner. So Sound Unwound, they're talking about music sites, they've got updated music content, and they've got a widget down here that is automatically populated with the track from the artist that they're talking about. And so the way that they're doing this is they're actually using the widget source stuff that I was just talking about. So this widget source is the parameters to be able to automatically drop in, and programmatically they're picking the product here that's going to go into this widget. So they have a way of when the page is being created, of dynamically choosing what this product will be, populating this value in the code on the web page, and then this will be up to date every time the page is loaded. It'll be up to date with the right thing.
Adding a markup tag to your keywords you want in the page when you write the blog.
Yes.
I can add a tag, a markup tag to each of the keywords I want, and then it'll populate the widget.
Yes. So so we have options for things like search. So populate the search with these keywords, and you can dynamically change the keywords that the search will be working on. Yes, when you create the blog page.
I'm going to argue with you a little bit on this and wonder whether there's plugins for WordPress that will make this easy for you to do, to talk to an Amazon widget, in other words, a lot of people might not have the money to employ this level of, but they might still like to have this functionality. Is anyone doing that? Is anyone kind of creating that kind of cross functionality as part of a plugin in WordPress?
ClearSpring.
Yeah.
What?
ClearSpring.
ClearSpring as a plugin?
I'm pretty sure they do for WordPress.
WordPress that will automatically read any widget.
I don't know if it'll do this auto updating stuff. I haven't played with that yet.
Right.
But I know ClearSpring has a WordPress plugin.
So if you put that plugin in and then you put a WordPress, if you put a ClearSpring widget.
Well, you can go to ClearSpring and design the widget at ClearSpring, and then put that code on your blog.
Okay.
With the WordPress plugin, it's through the plugin, not ClearSpring's site. Kind of like with Squidoo, where you go to Squidoo, you can click on the widget, it'll automatically add it to your site, and you go through programming the widget through your lens, not necessarily going to ClearSpring's site to do that, which you could do as well, but having a module like that makes it easier. So I don't know if that's what you mean, but
Yeah, but pretty much. I mean, it just sounds like this is more for a bigger site that, hire some people to do it, really. But that, you might want to just have your blog as a blogger, maybe I want to do this.
Yeah. So I think it's I think it's a great point, and I totally back you, and there's a role for that kind of stuff. I'm sorry, we're not offering it, but if other people are, then that's we can back that. I think it's cool. Yeah. So certainly back it. I mean, that's the whole point of these things, is that there's a whole ecosystem out there of people who are providing useful things and are evolving the right tools, and that's exactly the way to go. We back that to the hilt. We're clearly not able to keep up developing even ourselves.
Go back to Amazon and say, well, maybe we ought to do that.
Yeah. yeah, totally. It's very interesting to us, actually. I'll just kind of race through because we're running out of time. This is another example of a blog of some site using content. Some Japanese gamers site. These are some game review site, and they've got deals on games specifically oriented to games. So what deals on Amazon are going on that are showing games? I'll just sorry to flash through these things, but I'll just say, be careful with your use of widgets. Just as a general comment, I mean, this is just kind of fairly common sense. Don't plaster your page. The idea is, you're getting value and stickiness from people if they're actually engaged rather than offended by the content on your page or the kind of the style that you put them up. Don't necessarily give up if a specific widget isn't working for you. Think about how you can work it into different places or different things. So keep experimenting with these things. And again, the final one, as I've said, is that these widgets are playing into the ecosystem of tools that you have available to you for putting content on your site. So they complement rather than replace the idea of direct text links or banner ads that you may have. Think of using them in conjunction with the other features. Think of the role that they play on your site and why you're putting them there, and what value they can drive for you. So don't just necessarily dismiss out of hand, the other techniques that are available to you. Briefly, from our side, the sorts of things that we're looking to do is to support more customization. So this kind of input, this kind of feedback about how to dynamically populate stuff is kind of cool. I mentioned earlier, one of my reasons for liking widgets is that they support the ability to take niche content from the site or to create new ways of viewing content from the site. So we're still always looking at interesting niches. We produced a widget that was recently for an automotive parts finder widget that says, you enter your model of car, you enter the date, year it was, and it'll talk to you about the parts that are specifically available for that car if you're searching for them. So it's a way of finding exactly the right part for your car, and that's quite a niche domain, but it's quite cute in the way that it provides for people who need to find parts for their car. It's hard to get the model of radiator hose that fits my, whatever car it is, if you're doing work on it. So it's a way of getting those niche parts there. General maintenance, streamlining the process, trying to make things as easy as possible. We also have this, for associates, Amazon associates, we have this site stripe that appears at the top of the Amazon retail pages. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's a way to quickly let you build links to products. And we're also about to drop a widget button on that, so you can add this product from this detail page to a widget that you choose to add it to. So it's a way of browsing around the Amazon site. You can say, throw this in the widget, throw this in the widget, throw this in the widget, to quickly update stuff. Now,
So you mean you can go around and say, I like this, I like this, I like this, and then put a widget on your site that puts the 3 things that you like?
Yes, precisely. And in fact, it's even kind of cuter than that, in that if you have a widget, for example, in my favorites, that's on your site, and you go to then Amazon as the widget creator and say, I like this, I like this, I like this, automatically the widget on your site will be updated. You don't have to do anything else, right? So you can keep going there and clicking, I like this, and it'll appear as the first item on the page, right? So it makes it quite easy. So that's the cute stuff, and that'll be coming out pretty soon. So we are pretty much at time. I'm sorry, I'm happy to stay and talk to anyone. We've got time for a couple of questions if you want, but otherwise, come and talk to me first.
Hi, do you have any research that's been done that compares the value of a widget versus, say, remnant banner advertising? I know you said don't get rid of your display, your banner advertising, but do you know if there's research out there that shows?
I think there is research out there that's talking to these things. We know from our own metrics within Amazon that some of the widgets that we have get spectacular click-through, for example, in comparison to banners. In some contexts, it's kind of difficult to say across the board. These things sometimes, for some person, they get really good click-through with the banners that they've got. They're very topical to their site, for example, or they're just appealing to the audience of their site. But generally, we find that some of the widgets with more interesting content gets high click-through, and some of them even, get fairly high conversion as well. So the idea of putting something that's a bit more dynamic and interesting and updated and that sort of stuff rather than the passive banners, we do see, generally speaking, a higher click-through and a higher conversion rate and a higher monetization for affiliates through some of the widgets. But that's not to say, that's interesting for those, but they, as I've said, they work in conjunction with these other features rather than in opposition or exclusion to them. So it's not to say that the other ones are worthless. In fact, in some, there are instances where the banners perform spectacularly better for various reasons about the shape of the site, the way it's put together, they just don't perform as well, or they perform better. So, but we do see, in aggregate, we do see good click-through and conversion from the widgets. We think that they are worthwhile putting on the site. They are a feature that's good for associates.
Do you remember a context where that happened? Like you mentioned context. Do you remember, would you be willing to come out on the limb and say one time when it happened?
Oh, look, I would, because it's kind of illustrative to the point, and I don't think I've got one off the top of my head to give you of a specific example there. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I'm actually an advertiser, I'm not a publisher, but I'm curious to know, how do you optimize the widgets for the affiliates? I mean, with landing pages and banners, you have your A/B tests and all that, but how do you do it with widgets?
Well, you can do a similar, you can A/B test the widget placements on your page by putting them up there, running them for a while, taking it down, changing it. So you can run perhaps not a parallel A/B test as easily for yourself, but you could do a sequential A/B test. I mean, it's not as statistically, emphatically reliable, but if you're doing it across an aggregation, you can attribute a change in performance to a point in time when you've made a change. So you can do a kind of sequential A/B rather than a parallel A/B testing and that sort of stuff.
And as an advertiser, how do you optimize the widgets that you distribute to your affiliates?
Right. As an advertiser, how do you optimize them? That's a good question that I don't have a great answer for off the top of my
There's a lot
head.
more variables with a widget than there is with a static banner. I can change the color, I can change the shape, I put what content is on. I can't really do that with a banner. The creative, they give me the creative
Yes.
when I go to an advertiser. So it seems like apples and oranges.
Yeah, they are to that extent. So, I mean, you can look to kind of the features of the widgets from over time to see which customizations yield good results and which don't, and then evolve the offering that you have, perhaps restricting, as an advertiser, restricting the options that the people who are placing the widgets have to use. So I think it's one of those things where you do have to look at the aggregate behavior over time and decide whether a feature is good or not. For example, we offer a bunch of different kind of standard templates for widgets. We've thought about evolving those. We've reduced the set of some of those templates when we see that clearly no one's using this one. It's just not worth our while putting it up. No one's using it. It's not performing well. We'll remove that. It's kind of standard creative format for the widget away, and just there's no point us putting it out there. We'll clearly everyone uses this other format of the widget, and that's the one that we should be promoting. Yeah. So there's a bit of that. They've been interesting because there's, Facebook and things have a slightly more complicated financial, model for how they're able to monetize the widgets. But the widgets have been an interesting way for people to monetize from social networking sites, but particularly with the kind of, linking off kind of properties. That people have monetized well from sort of like games in social media sites. But we've certainly had issues with things like the copyright issues of the control of content that goes onto social media sites. So we've definitely, in our experience, have run across difficulties of things like displaying product images on social media sites because of the rights issues around the content that's being put up there. So the rights to the images that are being put up there, and who claims ownership of those. So we've certainly found it, it's not an open playing field for messing around with widgets. So the monetization is a little bit trickier. So there, the widgets tend to be more, about engagement and motivating people to some kind of off-site activity.